She caught it without trying. That's the part that still gets me. Nadia wasn't even in the cluster of women jostling near the dance floor. She was standing at the edge with a glass of something sparkling, talking to no one in particular, and the bouquet just curved out of the air and landed directly in her hands like it had her address. What I expected her to do was laugh, hold it up, and immediately hand it to the nearest 10-year-old. That was the Nadia I had known for 7 years. What she actually did was look down at the flowers for exactly 3 seconds, I counted, and then turn and walk straight across the reception hall to where I was sitting alone at table 9 and say 3 words I had never been able to say to her first. I should explain who I am before I explain what she said. My name is Callum Marsh. I'm 34. I install custom cabinetry, kitchens, home offices, the occasional restaurant bar. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the same building I moved into when I was 26, which I have not left mostly because the rent is frozen, and partly because I got used to the way the afternoon light hits the kitchen window, which my therapist says is a metaphor I'm choosing not to unpack. I have one close friend, who is not Nadia. I have 2 plants. I own exactly 1 suit, which I was wearing that Saturday. Nadia Reyes and I had been best friends for 7 years, long enough that she had a drawer in my apartment with a spare phone charger and a travel-sized dry shampoo she'd left in there so long it was probably expired. Long enough that she called me when the job fell through, when her ex showed up unannounced, when the news about her father came in the middle of a Tuesday and she needed somewhere to be that wasn't her own apartment. Long enough that I knew exactly when she was about to cry before her face moved, and exactly which kind of silence meant she needed me to talk, and which kind meant she needed me to stop. Long enough that I had stopped asking myself when I'd started feeling something that wasn't supposed to be there. That question had a very clear answer. I had just decided the answer was inconvenient. She had a habit of folding the corner of the cocktail napkins at restaurants into small, sharp triangles while she talked. She did it without looking down. She'd been doing it for as long as I could remember, and I had never told her I noticed, because noticing felt like admitting something. She was the maid of honor at her younger sister Clara's wedding. She'd spent 6 months helping plan it. That morning, she'd texted me 3 separate panicked messages about the centerpieces, and I'd talked her down over the phone while driving, which was inadvisable, and I would do again without hesitation. The venue was a converted barn about 40 minutes outside the city, the kind that had exposed beams and string lights, and smelled like cedar and something floral I couldn't name. The ceremony had been in the late afternoon, when the light came through the high windows in long gold stripes across the floor. I sat in the 3rd row on the groom's side and watched Nadia walk down the aisle ahead of her sister. And I did what I always did at these moments. I looked at her for exactly long enough that it was not conspicuous, and then I looked at the door. I had a strong survival strategy. I had been executing it for approximately 5 years. Dinner was at round tables with candles and white tablecloths, and I was seated at table 9 with the groom's college friends and an aunt from out of town, who spent most of the main course telling me about her garden. I liked her immediately. Nadia was at the head table, which was where she was supposed to be, and she was excellent at it. She gave the toast that made Clara ugly cry, and then laugh, and then cry again, and Nadia was laughing too, but keeping it together, touching her collarbone in the way she did when she was trying not to lose it. That got the smallest real smile from me that I hadn't planned on giving. By the time the dancing started and the bouquet toss was announced, I had ordered a second drink and was mentally calculating whether I could reasonably leave in the next 45 minutes without it being a thing. I wasn't unhappy. I was just full of something I didn't have a clean name for, and a wedding was, as it turns out, not the ideal place to be carrying it around. Then, the bouquet went sideways off the DJ's request that all the single ladies gather. And Nadia, who had been standing at the perimeter of the whole thing with the expression of someone who is supportive but not participating, simply reached out at the right moment and caught it by reflex. She looked at it. She looked at me. She walked across the room. The reception hall was loud. The band had started something up-tempo. But where she stopped, right at the edge of table 9, I could hear her perfectly. The aunt from out of town had gone to find her husband. The college friends were on the dance floor. It was just me, in my one suit, and Nadia standing there holding white peonies and looking at me like she'd made a decision and was still deciding whether to execute it. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She set the bouquet down on the table, not gently. She set it down like it had annoyed her. "You're leaving soon," she said. It wasn't a question. 45 minutes, I said. Give or take. Callum. She said my name in a way that made something at the base of my sternum go still. Not dramatically. Just still. "I need to tell you something." "Okay," she looked away. The string lights were doing something to the angle of her jaw, I noticed, with the part of my brain that was still apparently functional. Her fingers found the corner of one of the white cocktail napkins on the table and started folding it into a triangle automatically, the way they always did. I watched her fold the napkin and understood that she was nervous, which Nadia almost never was, which meant whatever she was about to say had been sitting in her for a while. "I've been trying to figure out the right moment for this for a long time," she said, "and I don't think there is one. A right moment. So I'm doing it at a wedding, which is probably the most embarrassing version possible. But here we are." A short exhale. She would love this, actually. Clara would be insufferable about it. I agreed. Exactly. Something in her face softened half a degree, which is why I'm doing it now, while she's distracted. This was not hiding. It was hiding, with better branding. I let the silence sit for a moment. The band was doing something slow now. They'd shifted tempo, and the lights had gone a little warmer. I looked at Nadia, who was looking at the folded napkin corner, and I thought about 7 years and spare chargers, and the kind of silence that means she needs me to stop talking. "You don't have to say anything," I said. "We can get more drinks. We can go find Clara and let her be insufferable. If this is, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be tonight." She looked up. "I know," she said. "I know I don't have to." She held my gaze for 1 second longer than felt safe. "I've been using that exit for 5 years, Callum. I'm tired of it." Something in my chest moved. Not dramatically, just enough. She set the folded napkin corner down. "I changed your name in my phone," she said. "About 4 years ago. I changed it to something stupid and sentimental, and I kept waiting to change it back, and then I just stopped. A pause. Every time I talked to someone about my life, you were in it. Every time I imagined something good happening, a trip, a Sunday, a terrible movie, you were the person I put there without thinking." She looked somewhere near my collar and not quite at my face. "I think I've been in love with you for a long time, and I've been very carefully not saying that. And I'm saying it now, in a barn, at my sister's wedding, which is very on brand for how much I've overthought this." The room did something quiet. She heard it after she said it. I could see it. The slight widening of her eyes, the moment the words registered in her own ears. She looked like a woman who had just realized her own mouth had betrayed classified information. "You're not saying anything," she said. "I'm trying to figure out where to start. That's either good or very bad." I looked at her. Nadia Reyes, who had been at the other end of every phone call that mattered, who folded napkin corners at restaurants without looking down. who had spent 6 months planning a wedding for her sister and was now standing at the edge of table 9, having just handed me something that I understood. In that moment, she'd been holding very carefully for a very long time. "What did you change my name to?" I asked. She went still. "Then that is not the follow-up question I was prepared for. I'm going to need to know. I'm not telling you that in a barn." Nadia, a long pause. Her jaw moved slightly. "It's a very obvious adjective," she said quietly. "Followed by your name. It's embarrassing. It was 4 years ago, and I was being sincere in a way I didn't expect. And I think we should move past it." I thought about 4 years of her phone screen with a very obvious adjective above my name, and what that meant about every phone call in between, and every Sunday, and every terrible movie. "I've been in love with you since the week you moved into your apartment," I said. "There was a Tuesday. You just started at the firm. You were a mess. You ate half my leftover pasta standing at my kitchen counter, and then fell asleep on my couch with your shoes still on, and I sat there looking at you, and just completely fell off the edge of something I didn't know I was standing near." She was looking at me now. "Fully 7 years ago," she said. 7 years ago. You've been carrying that for 7 years. You changed your phone contact 4 years ago. I met her eyes. You weren't exactly filing paperwork either. She laughed. It came out slightly wrong. Too quick. Too high. And then she put her hand over her mouth and looked at the ceiling, and when she looked back down, her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the string lights. "This is insane," she said. "Yeah, we've wasted so much time." "Some of it," I said. "Not all of it." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached across the corner of table 9 and took my hand. Not dramatically, just placed her fingers over mine the way you touch something you're not sure is real yet, slowly, like she was giving us both time to adjust. "Okay," she said quietly. "So what do we do now?" I said, "we could start with a very obvious adjective." She shook her head, but she was smiling, fully, the kind that reached everything. "Absolutely not. I'll figure it out. You will not have my phone. I have your charger. I have leverage." She laughed again, and this time it came out right, and from somewhere behind us there was a small commotion. Clara's voice rising above the band, "Oh my God, are you serious right now?" That carried across the entire hall, and Nadia turned to look and I turned to look. And Clara was pointing at us from the dance floor, with an expression of someone who had been waiting a very long time to be right about something which was extremely on brand. "She's going to be completely unbearable," Nadia said. "You predicted this. I predicted this." Clara was already moving toward us. Nadia squeezed my hand once and didn't let go. 3 months later, the very obvious adjective turned out to be favorite. That's all I'm going to say about that. She still folded cocktail napkins at restaurants without looking down. I still noticed. The difference was that now, when I noticed, I didn't have to file it somewhere I wasn't supposed to look. She kept the spare phone charger in the drawer. Some things don't change when they work. A year after the wedding, on a Tuesday, for no particular reason, she called me from 3 rooms away in our apartment and asked if I wanted tea. I said yes. She appeared in the doorway of the kitchen and handed me a mug and went back to what she was doing. That was it. That was all it was. I sat there with the mug and the afternoon light coming through the window and thought about a very specific Tuesday 7 years ago. A leftover pasta, her shoes still on, and the edge I hadn't known I was standing near. It hadn't changed. It had just finally stopped hiding. Years later, when people asked how we got together, I said, "She caught a bouquet and walked across a room." She said, "I changed a contact name and was too stubborn to change it back." Clara said, They were the last two people in any room to figure out what everyone else already knew. They were all right, in their way.